Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the Tribe of Christians broadcast. I'm your host, founder, and ministry leader, Brandon Dawson. Today's date is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. Now, I have an urgent prophetic update that reveals a warning concerning a coming major financial economic collapse, and that is going to happen very soon. So I'm going to reveal all of the prophetic context behind this warning, including its connections to Europe, the Russian-Ukraine war, and the U.S. financial dollar system, its biblical prophetic connections to the end times and the prophetic timeline, what is going to happen, who it is going to target, why it is happening, when it is going to happen, and my overall prophetic perspective on how to not only protect yourselves, but also to benefit from what is coming. Now, if there was ever a time to pay attention, to take notes, to prepare, it is now more than ever. And not only that, but I would tell you to let everybody know. As always, I'm going to include all of the links to every single publication or prophetic sources mentioned in this video in the About sections, as well as the comment sections below for your reference. Now, let's get started. Now, first things first, like every single major global prophetic event that occurs and has occurred throughout history in the Bible, it will be centered on Israel. So it is very important to understand the context behind what is occurring and why it is occurring. Now, just this past Friday, beginning on the Jewish Sabbath on February 28th, a 7 planetary alignment served as an incredible prophetic sign, also occurring at the beginning of the major Muslim holiday of Ramadan. Now, the biblical sign for the number 7 suggests to us that this is a preordained, appointed time marking a major significant prophetic event regarding Israel. Now, the last time a 7 planetary alignment occurred was on April 8th of 2024 during a major significant solar eclipse, which is also connected to the 2017 American solar eclipse, which crossed paths, forming the Hebrew letter of Tav, which means to mark or to sign as an omen. Now, this is extremely, very important to take note of. In addition to that, 14 days later, from February 28th, a blood moon lunar eclipse is going to occur on March 13th through 14th during the Jewish festival of Purim. Now, Purim is the celebration of the events which takes place in the book of Esther. Now, in the book of Esther, a prophetic pattern does occur, specifically with the number 7, and indicates again a preordained marked time by God concerning the liberation of the Jewish people. Now, the moon in Bible prophecy generally symbolizes Israel, where the sun symbolizes the Gentile nations. So, the planetary alignment connecting to the solar eclipses of 2017 and last year, 2024, to the blood moon of the Jewish festival of Purim that's going to occur tells us a significant major warning is being given to the Gentile nations concerning a prophetic fulfillment in connection to the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. Now, the number 14 in the Bible also symbolizes a prophetic warning, and it's also connected to the Jewish people and is connected to famine. In our modern present time, it is a financial or economic collapse or trouble. Genesis 41, God gives Pharaoh 2 dreams concerning a massive coming famine, which Joseph interprets. Genesis 41:32 says that the reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. So in other words, the number 14 is the number twice, which means that God is confirming the warning of what is about to happen, and it will happen soon. So these signs are deeply connected to events relating to Europe, Russia, and the Russian-Ukraine warning again about Israel, which I will reveal in even more specifics in just a moment. On May 10th of 2021, the Lord first began to give to me revelations of a major war that was coming concerning Europe through a series of dreams, all occurring within just a few weeks apart from each other, all foretelling a significant major event that was going to unfold over Europe, impacting England, France, Russia, China, and the United States. Now, on May 10th of 2021, I dreamt that the Queen Elizabeth appearing before the Lord in heaven among an entire host in front of a water fountain. Now, I had no idea at that time, but this specific dream was also a warning about Queen Elizabeth's coming death and what sign that it would serve. Now, the Lord told her to scoop out some water from the water font and to look into it like a mirror or a reflection. Then the Lord asked me what I saw in the water, and what I saw was a sword. I had no idea what that meant, so I asked the Lord its meaning, and he told me that it was an English sword representing war that would come over Europe. Then on September 5th of 2021, the Jewish festival of Rosh Hashanah, at exactly 5:24 a.m. that morning, just as I had headed into work, I heard the sound of a trumpet blowing, followed by the sound of footsteps of a massive army marching, and then I heard the word Ararat spoken. Now, Ararat is a mountain in Turkey where Noah's Ark is believed to have been the final resting place. Turkey is also associated with the coming Ezekiel 37 and 38 war of Gog and Magog, which is also associated with Russia, including many other nations. Now, in addition to Mount Ararat, there is another mountain that sounds very similar, but it's spelled differently. It is located in the South China Sea near the Philippines, suggesting not only a massive war coming with Russia, but also China. Now, at that time, I had no idea, but the exact time of this, when this projection had occurred, was actually a projection, a prophecy in itself, revealing the actual date of when this war would begin. 5 months later, from September, on the 24th day, Russia launched its war into Ukraine. Now, after the war began on April 15th of 2022, I had another dream, which brought about another revelation about the war and the coming economic collapse involving the U.S. dollar. I was watching the war in Ukraine, and I was observing the United States and the Western NATO allies continue to provide financial military aid to Ukraine. And I was pondering the outcome of the war and how long that it was going to last and who would win it. So as I was thinking about this, I heard a voice say to me, "Watch what will happen." And then as I was observing the war in Ukraine, I suddenly saw the value of the U.S. dollar and currency begin to plummet considerably, impacting the U.S. and Western NATO allies in Europe. And then I turned to the Middle East and Asia, and I saw significant oil deals in other currencies, favoring other nations and their currencies. Now, I didn't see specifically which countries in particular, but I did have a foreknowledge that the OPEC countries and Saudi Arabia had shifted away from the United States and the U.S. dollar, completely undoing all of the original deals that were made in the 70s. And I watched the value of the U.S. dollar and currency plummet, and I saw the economies and currencies in European NATO countries begin to fall as well. And when this happened, I saw the United States and Western NATO allies could no longer financially support military assistance to Ukraine. Now, when this happened, I saw the war in Ukraine with Russia progress aggressively, and Ukraine began to run out of supplies and military aid, which caused the war to shift in Russia's favor. This put the nations in extremely great distress. Now, 10 days after that dream, on May 22nd of 2021, I had another dream concerning France, where I heard a woman crying out in deep distress. And so when I asked her where she was, she simply just held up a $1 US bill, a $1 US bill, and wrote on it with a black permanent marker the word Paris on it, and that was all. And then also on May 17th, I had a dream where I saw a third global world war had occurred, where there was a man in this dream who revealed to me that China had attacked the the United States. Now, all three of these dreams occurred in May, just a few weeks apart from each other. The month of May is when Israel was reformed as a nation, May 14th, 1948, also suggesting a potential time frame, which I'm going to reveal in even more detail also in just a moment. Now, a lot of these things occurred during the Biden administration. Some of these things had already kind of taken place with these oil deals shifting and occurring overseas, revolving the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and the rise of the BRICS nations. Now, this dream also reveals much more significant issues, more than just Russia and Ukraine, the Russia and Ukraine war, but also much bigger issues than the U.S. economy. It shows specific events that are directly related to Israel. Now, September 18th of 2024, a horrific event unfolded at the UN General Assembly, where essentially nearly all of Europe, including 124 nations, either voted to remove the Jews from their homeland in Israel or they abstained, did not vote at all. This deliberate act of defiance and rebellion is against the Lord God and against the Bible, which unveils massive consequences is coming for these nations. Now, in June 21st of 2024, I was given another revelation specifically concerning Europe and England as to not only why Nazi Germany and World War II occurred, but also revealed why the Lord is against England in addition to what has happened with the recent UN vote. Now, the Lord revealed a deeply rooted pagan this obsession that's occurring with bloodlines concerning the throne of England and its population that go back to even the King Arthur story. Now, this obsession also includes replacement theology, which essentially believes that the throne of England is either descendants from the tribe of Judah or that the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh from Joseph migrated into Europe, causing Europe to replace the nation of Israel literally. Detailed and very thorough DNA and historical tests have already disproven this horrific theory. Now, in Revelation chapter 2, there's even a very specific warning concerning this horrific idolatry and the sin that occurs. If you look at Revelation chapter 2, verses 9 concerning the church in Smyrna, the Lord says, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer the persecution of 10 days, but be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. A warning specifically concerning to the false claim relating to the Jewish people in Israel. Now, scripture evidence proves that throughout the Bible, that God brings judgment on an idol or idols through that idol itself against the people who are worshiping it. Now, God uses the 10 plagues in Exodus against the 10 idols in Egypt to bring about the liberation of the Jewish people. And also, if you read in Ezekiel 16 and 17, when Israel idolized the Babylonians, God then raises up Babylon and then lays siege against it and even destroys Jerusalem in the first Jewish temple. Therefore, God used the idolatry and the pagan worships of racism of these bloodlines, raising up Nazi Germany to wage war across Europe, which again resulted in the liberation of the Jewish people in 1948. And so the UN vote proves that Europe has not repented from this idolatry, this paganism, and so God is about to bring further judgment against it. It's going to begin through the forms of famine, aka an economic collapse, and I believe a coming second plague. Now, this was during the Biden administration. Since that time, again, there has been massive inflation, government spending, as well as massive changes concerning the oil markets and the petrodollars, including the rise of the BRICS nations. And now with major news headlines, this shows and reveals that the U.S. economy is in major, very significant trouble. All the warning signs are flashing red. Now, God reveals that war will begin with Russia and Ukraine, and an economy and an economic famine is going to trigger the collapse of the US dollar, leading to a massive financial collapse in Europe, which causes Western nations unable to continue to fund the Ukraine war. So when this happens, again, the war is going to shift into Russia's favor, causing for those alliances, the Gog and Magog alliances, the Persian alliances, these OPEC nations to officially form. And then on May 5th of 2022, I had another major significant revelation through a dream. And so as I was watching the news on TV, a map appeared on the TV, similar to the one in the picture where it shows Russian control under the yellow and orange areas. So while watching the TV, I saw this map and it was beginning to flash or blink. And I saw that the entire country, Ukraine, had been colored in. And I saw the words, Russia takes Ukraine. And I was completely shocked at what I saw. And then the dream had shifted. And then I was standing in what appeared to be Moscow, and in front of its Capitol building, I saw many Persian and Asian countries beginning to appear in Moscow, where they were coming to pay respects and homage to Moscow, where I also saw India with them. And with them, I also saw the Principality of Persia, the one spoken of from the prophet Daniel, and I saw what appeared to be new and more excellent or big alliances forming with Russia, and I saw significant hostilities towards Americans and the United States. Now, again, this all occurred during the Biden administration, and over the last several years, we saw things that historically occurred that has never been recorded or recorded in history, especially concerning with North Korean troops in Russia and fighting in the Ukraine war, as well as the massive Chinese alliance with the Russian military in these drills that are being conducted. This has never happened before. These things already started to come to pass. Now, we are currently in the Jewish New Year for Jewish year for 5785. Now, I did a thorough teaching on this again. The links are going to be included in the About section and comment section below for your reference. The Jewish letter for the number 5 is the letter He, which means to behold or to look, indicating a massive sign that is occurring. And we're, just as I showed in the beginning of this message, there are already massive celestial signs that are occurring. Now, in addition to this, the number 5 in the Bible also symbolizes grace. And so when you add up the year, those numbers for 5785, you actually get the total of the number 25, which means grace upon grace. That number 25 is the number 5 compounded by itself. So I projected at that time, or predicted that not only Trump would win the elections, it would also serve as a significant sign, but a temporary period, a small period of grace to Israel and America, giving America a very small window or small period of time to prepare for all the disasters that are about to unfold. Now, in addition to that number 25 representing grace, if you actually take the number for 85, as in 5785, in the Hebrew concordance, it is the word to represent for Abraham, representing the nation of Israel, the birthplace of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then in addition to that, if you go and you look up the number 85 for the Greek concordance, it shows representing the word emanio, which means to be in great distress, revealing the link to what the Bible has called the time of Jacob's trouble, or the rising of the birthing pains, the coming distress upon the nations. In 2020, the United States put forward a plan in favor of a two-state solution that would have divided up over a combined amount of 70% of Judea and Samaria for Palestinian statehood. This is against what the Bible says in Joel chapter 3, 1 and 2, warning against the division of the land. So 2 months after that, a global pandemic occurred. Now, fast forward to 2025, the United States, again through a second Trump presidency, announces that it will take over and own the Gaza Strip. Now, although this is absolutely going to strengthen Jewish sovereignty over Israel, it is, again, a form of division against the land of Israel, serving to possibly be a catalyst or a trigger of these events that are about to unfold. Now, if you go forward just a few months ahead of now to September, to the month of September, the Jewish New Year for 5786 is going to occur September 22nd through the 24th. Now, the number 6 in the Hebrew is the letter Vav, V-A-V, in the English. Now, in the Hebrew, Vav means hook, and is primarily associated with the concept of connection, signifying the joining of two things together, often resembling a hook or a tent peg. Now, Ezekiel 38:3-4, it says this. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen, fully armed, and a great horde, and a large and small shields, all brandishing their swords. So the Vav, the hook, that is in the mouth of these nations concerning the coming war of the war of Gog and Magog, will be directly tied to Israel and what is now starting to unfold in Europe, and specifically began with the Russian-Ukraine war. Now, in addition to this, the number 6 in the Bible also symbolizes man, sin, and lawlessness. So in other words, our short time of relief or grief is about to be turned over before or leading into the month of September, because the month of May, again, is the anniversary of when Israel was reformed as a nation in 1948. So we can begin seeing these signs beginning to emerge sometime around the month of May throughout the summer leading into September. And I believe what is going to happen is that these people are going to crash the US dollar, and they're going to replace it with another currency, or at least digital forms of the US dollar. Now take a look at this.
In over a decade as a market analyst, I saw it time and again. The biggest money isn't made when everything is predictable. It's made when the unthinkable happens, when the rules of the game suddenly change. And right now, something is happening behind closed doors that will change everything. In fact, one 35-year market veteran called a special meeting of his clients to say it could blow up the financial system. Hey Bowtie Nation, Joseph Hogue here, and what I'm about to tell you is something nobody is talking about yet. Secret meetings President Trump is having with world leaders, talks meant to force U.S. Treasury holders into a deal that would be the biggest change to the dollar and interest rates in more than 40 years. Nobody is talking about this yet, but if it happens, the investments I'll highlight in this video are going to be the only ones that are going to save you from a crash in the rest of the market. Now, I want to walk you through what's being talked about at these secret meetings, what it could mean for the dollar, and really the entire U.S. financial system, then highlight those investments that you need to be making ahead of all of this. First reported by Bloomberg, these Mar-a-Lago Accords are based on meetings President Trump has had with world leaders in Florida before and after the election, and now at the White House. Besides talk of a sovereign wealth fund, which we've already covered here on the channel, and I'll link to that video in the description below, but also key to these talks is the idea of forcing government holders of U.S. treasuries to swap those out for 100-year zero-coupon bonds. And I saw some eyes glazing over out there with what that means, so I want to explain it because it could simultaneously save the U.S. Treasury trillions of dollars in interest on debt, but also crash the value of the dollar. First, governments around the world hold U.S. dollars as part of their foreign exchange reserves, a kind of savings account they use to manage the value of their own currency, but also a stability fund since the dollar is the world's reserve currency. Right now, governments hold almost $6.5 trillion in U.S. dollars, about 60% of total foreign reserves. But they're not just sitting on those greenbacks in a big vault like Scrooge McDuck. They're holding U.S. Treasury bonds, mostly the 30-year bond, which pays 4.5% annual interest. Now, those regular types of bonds pay interest, called a coupon to investors, so investors receive that steady interest as a return over the life of the debt, but zero-coupon bonds pay nothing until they mature. In this case, the U.S. government is telling foreign governments it wants an interest-free loan for 100 years. And you can see the dollar figures this would add up to. On the $36 trillion in national debt, that 4.5% rate amounts to an interest of almost $1.6 trillion a year. Now, most U.S. debt is held by Americans, but even just the foreign-held debt is over $8.6 trillion. On that $8.6 trillion in treasuries held by foreign governments, interest payments are a mind-bending $394 billion a year. The plan then at these secret meetings is to force governments to agree to swap out their interest-paying bonds into those 100-year bonds that pay no interest at all, which sounds like a pretty shitty deal, but here's the kicker. The U.S. is saying, do this as a way to pay us back for decades as the world's police force and the driver of the global economy. So, yeah, I guess forcing foreign governments into this kind of deal is like convincing your ex to lend you money. It's possible, but someone's gonna get burned. But it's also the kind of offer they can't refuse, right? The US spends more on its military than any other country by a factor of 3 times. Until this year, the US was the world's largest donor of foreign aid at $35 billion, more than double the amount given by all the EU countries combined. And while nobody is taking this seriously yet, we need to start talking about what it means and what you need to do with your investments before it happens. The plan is being compared to the 1985 Plaza Accords, an agreement between the Reagan administration and Japan, West Germany, France, and the UK to deliberately weaken the US dollar against the yen and the Deutschmark. At the time, the US trade deficit was skyrocketing as Americans bought cheaper international products. The strength of the US dollar caused American manufacturers to struggle, especially against those imports from Japan. So then the Plaza Accord was a coordinated intervention by these top 5 countries to crash the value of the dollar by almost 50% against the yen and the Deutschmark over the next few short years. That's because a cheaper dollar makes US products cheaper to buy overseas and makes foreign imports more expensive for Americans, helping to reverse that giant trade deficit. The $2.7 billion in plastic lids we export to Mexico each year will be even cheaper. The Mexicans are going to be able to buy even more of them. Fast forward 40 years, and the US is once again struggling under that massive trade deficit. Americans bought $1.2 trillion more in products from overseas than the US shipped out as exports, and once again, part of the problem is the strength in the dollar. Because of higher interest rates and a solid economy, the US dollar is the highest it's been against foreign currencies in upwards of 25 years, and before that, all the way back to the 85 Plaza Accord. Now folks, let's be honest, crashing the value of the dollar like we did back in 85 isn't going to fix all the problem. Americans love to spend, and we're always going to have a trade deficit, but like we saw 40 years ago, a weaker dollar will help to make US manufacturing more competitive. The Plaza Accord and its effect on the dollar caused the US trade deficit to shrink for more than a decade and did revive US manufacturing. Many of the ideas in the negotiations are being taken straight from a November 2024 paper by Stephen Barron, Trump's nominee to lead the White House Council of Economic Advisors. In it, he writes this: reforming the global trade system to weed out economic imbalances driven by a persistent dollar overvaluation and put American industry on fairer ground. This might all sound like a win-win for the US, but there are some huge unintended consequences here that will crush parts of the financial system and the stock market.
So in addition to this coming famine, I believe that we're also going to experience another massive pandemic. Now, just think about everything that you would have done differently had you known COVID-19 was coming, had you known all the economic hardships that were coming, and do those things. Everything, if you had known it was coming, what you would have done differently, and do that. Now, I don't believe that you guys should put this off any longer, shouldn't take any chances. Do everything you can to take every necessary precaution and warn everybody that you know. Now, this isn't all bad news, because I believe that we absolutely need a massive correction in the markets to bring prices down, to make things affordable for people to be able to pay off these debts, as well as to be able to afford houses and a place to live and cars again. So many of you out there like us have been waiting for this moment, so it is not all bad news, but I don't believe that we should underestimate this thing in any way, shape, or form. Should do everything that we can to take all the necessary precautions that we can, including protecting all of your assets, to hedge against them and to hedge against your 401ks. Now, as always, guys, this is going to conclude this broadcast message. Keep running your race. Keep fighting the good fight of faith. Whatever you do, stay encouraged and never lose hope. Never give up.